I told you about why I'm worried about our civil rights as Donald Trump prepares to return to the White House for a second time. For more on this, I'm joined by Janai Nelson, President and Director Counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, as well as Derrick Johnson, the President and CEO of the NAACP. Welcome to both of you. So glad to have you for this conversation. Derrick, I just talked about why I'm worried about civil rights in the next Trump era. Can you talk about the NAACP and what your organization is focused on as we look forward to what may be coming after January?
I think your op-ed and your earlier statements are all spot on. We are concerned about all the things you mentioned, but in the immediate, we are working really hard with the current administration around clemency. The extraordinary power of pardons and clemency is something that we cannot leave on the table. We've had long-standing disparities in how people were treated at sentencing for the same crimes. And so we are pushing really hard towards the end of this administration to ensure there's some equity in how people are treated, those who are currently locked up. Because we know when the next administration come in, many individuals who attacked our nation's capital will receive a pardon. And those are treasonous acts. And we've had to confront that for many years, African American community, where people would celebrate the Confederacy when the Confederacy was actually a treasonous act. So the immediate, we're going to focus on this administration and work really hard to ensure that we can do away with some of the disparities in our criminal justice system.
Janai, the work that LDF and so many other organizations like it do on behalf of aggrieved people in order to enforce current existing civil rights laws is going to be so much more important when you do not have a DOJ and a civil rights division led by a Kristen Clarke, for example. How do you intend to develop the apparatus, if you will, to continue that work where the Supreme Court has made it increasingly difficult for organizations to sort of sue on behalf of aggrieved parties? I'm thinking specifically about the Voting Rights Act, for example, and how that has sort of been gutted in a way that has made it much more challenging for outside organizations to sue on behalf of individuals. What's the plan? What's the thought process there?
Well, we've been here before. Of course, we know that the selections of nominees of this incoming administration are even more egregious than Trump's first administration. And during that time, LDF became the alternative DOJ. We were prosecuting civil rights cases, administrative law cases, broad constitutional challenges, because we knew that the Department of Justice under Trump was just not reliable as an enforcer of civil rights or constitutional protection. So we had to fill the breach along with many of our allies in the field. And we're prepared to do that again, to be the surrogate Department of Justice, because we will not abandon the civil rights laws that we have fought so hard for over 80 years. And we know that these protections are as necessary as ever. But this time around, it's equally important that we leverage all law and power and processes to ensure that these anti-democratic efforts, these corrupt actions and abuses of power are stymied right out the gate. And we've already seen some wins and some evidence of that. We have to not only be the surrogate DOJ, we also have to be capital D disruptors of this second administration. Because as you noted in your excellent op-ed, that Project 2025 is attempting to really upend everything that we've constructed for a multiracial democracy to succeed. So we're prepared, we're ready, and we welcome the support of all allies in the field who want to do this work to ensure that our democracy endures this significant threat.
I like that. Disruptors with a capital D. You bring up some interesting points when you talk about the notion of coalition building. And Derrick, I have a question for you. As the leader of the NAACP right now, I think that ideologically there may be some challenges. On one hand, there is the philosophy around what it is to be a disruptor. But then on the other hand, there is the question around at least making the attempt at coalition building. You've talked about the work that the NAACP is doing with the current administration. Are there efforts to engage the incoming administration around perhaps building a coalition with respect to civil rights and ensuring that some of these things are protected? And if so, what does that look like?
Well, first of all, in order to build a coalition, you have to have mutual interest in outcomes. And so if there's a demonstrated and genuine mutual interest and outcome that we can pursue, we're always open. But at the end of the day, the NAACP, our job is to protect the communities that we work for, to ensure democracy work for everyone, that equal protection under the law is afforded to all citizens, and more importantly, protect the gains that were made through hard-won fights. Janae mentioned LDF, 80 years old. LDF, born out of the NAACP, is 115 years old. And we jointly fight to ensure that the Constitution applies to everyone. That's our job. That will continue to be our primary responsibility with the African-American community at the tip of that spear.
Janae, you talked about the very important work that the LDF does in terms of standing in the gap. If someone is sitting at home right now and they are worrying about what the DOJ is going to look like moving forward, but wants to support a LDF, a Lawyers Committee for the Lawyers Commission on Civil Rights, if they want to support an advancement project, Southern Law Poverty Center, Equal Justice Initiative, any of these organizations that are engaged in this fight, what does that support look like in terms of the legal aspect of this? If you don't have much money, but you are someone who's invested in this, can you talk about ways that people can actually get involved in the fight?
Yes, I encourage anyone who's concerned about the future of this multiracial democracy in this moment to join us, to follow us at NAACP-LDF.org and all of the other excellent organizations that you just mentioned, Charles. Civil society is under attack. If folks have been paying attention, they will know that there was a bill that was passed by the House of Representatives that aims to kill nonprofits. It is an attempt to give the government, the Department of Treasury specifically, unfettered discretion to decide that one of the organizations that I represent or that Derek or someone else represents is a terrorist supporting organization just because we hold beliefs that may be different from the incoming administration. So when you hear about bills like that, when you hear about definitions that will open the floodgates to interrogating civil society organizations like the Legal Defense Fund that are nonpartisan, that are here to protect our democracy and to protect some of our most vulnerable communities, please support us, but also join the fight. Call your representatives in Congress. Be an agitator. Show up at the meetings. Get engaged. This is a moment not to sit at the sidelines, but to be on the field and play very hard offense and defense, because we are facing an onslaught of attacks.
Derek, there's been a lot of talk about different organizations and individuals being targeted by the next Trump administration, and I can't imagine that the NAACP somehow does not make that list. How are you all preparing for what could be a different level of spotlight on the organization with respect to the work that you all have done and do within community?
But we stand focused. We understand the how power will be leveraged. It has been demonstrated in the past, but as an organization, we know that the louder our voices, the more effective we are, the bigger the target we have. But that's the job, and that's a part of us doing the work that needs to be done. We encourage people to get involved. I think our organization, we are on the ground in communities across the country in 47 states. We still have local opportunities that we will be aggressively pursuing, municipal, county, and statewide. We recognize that the power of this moment are the people we invest in and people standing up to demand that the social contract called the Constitution applies to everyone. So we ask people to join, be a part of it, join locally, let your voices be heard, choose the vehicle for your voice to ensure that the protections that are guaranteed are in place. And so our fight will continue. We will get attacked, but we will continue to fight because that is the nature of who we are as a community. That's the nature of the NAACP.
Well, I believe you persevere. And ladies and gentlemen, the Qs run the NAACP. That was Derek Johnson and Janae Nelson. Thank you to you both.